Baby steps.
After your faith hasn't let you down.
This is Infants on Thrones.
I'm looking for the further light and knowledge Father promised to send me.
Baby steps. Baby steps.
Look for the good in everyone.
All right, welcome back to Infants on Thrones. I'm Glenn Ostland, and I've been sharing a book that I've written called You're Not Broken, Just Rewiring, which highlights my approach to therapy and overall mental health and well-being. And now here we are, very close to the end. Just a few more steps to the finish line. But there's not really a finish line, you know. There's always just now. And each consecutive moment adds a little something extra that wasn't there before. So if you've been enjoying this book and you're looking forward to the print copy with minor corrections and expanded chapter endnotes, because yes, I know that Bear Lake is in northern Utah, not southern Utah. I messed that up in the preface when I told the Bear Claw pendant story. It was actually Fish Lake, which really is in southern Utah. But anyway, if you've been enjoying the book and would like to be notified when the print version becomes available, please reach out to me at infantsonthrones@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. And also, please share this with others and give me a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you listen. I'd really appreciate it. But for now, let's wrap this thing up. All right?
Hang on to your hats and glasses, because this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
Chapter 18. The Glitch is the Gift. Returning to the beginning as something new. Is it just me? Or is there something holy about returning to where you started and realizing you've changed? Not in the way sitcoms wrap everything up with a tidy bow, or life's puzzles suddenly make perfect sense. But in that quiet moment when you circle back to the origin point with different eyes. You notice the same ache, but greet it with softness. You recognize the same thoughts, but respond to them with love. You feel the same freeze, but this time you stay. It reminds me of the movie What About Bob? Bill Murray plays Bob Wiley, a perennial client absolutely convinced he is broken. The entire film is a comedy of errors as he gradually, unwittingly, rewires. He takes baby steps in hilarious conflict with his egotistical therapist, Dr. Leo Marvin, who, not coincidentally, also struggles with pride, especially the pride of authorship, having written a book called Baby Steps. In one scene, Dr. Marvin checks Bob into a psychiatric facility. But instead of unraveling, Bob captivates the staff. He charms them with jokes, including one about a Rorschach inkblot. Now, the Rorschach is a psychological tool originally created by Swiss psychiatrist Hermann Rorschach in the early 20th century to explore the inner world of the client through open-ended, ambiguous images. There's no right answer. The image itself is meaningless until the viewer brings their story to it. The interpretation is the insight. In Bob's joke, the psychologist holds up an inkblot. What do you see in this one? Sex. And this one? Sex. And what about this one? Also sex. The psychologist furrows his brow. Sir, it appears you are obsessed with sex. And Bob responds, Me? You're the one showing all the dirty pictures. Cue the laughter. Because, of course, the joke works. The Rorschach is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The images are nonsense. It's the mind that makes them meaningful. And that's my hope for this book. that it's been a kind of Rorschach ink blot for you. I used to be a missionary, and in some ways I was trained for that role before I could even speak. One of the first songs I remember singing as a child went like this: I hope they call me on a mission when I have grown a foot or two. I hope by then I will be ready to teach and preach and work as missionaries do. It was in me from the start. Now, in some religious traditions, missionaries offer service with no strings attached. But that wasn't how I was taught. I was trained in the commitment pattern, a framework that, when examined closely, reveals a number of manipulation tactics. Build relationships of trust. Identify shared beliefs. Use both to gain influence. All in the service of one goal: converting the mind of the investigator into conformity, into obedience. One heart, one mind. And I watched that happen. In Japan, I taught people who joined, people who converted, people who became one with the Mormon Church. But that unity often came at a cost. They were sometimes encouraged to cut ties with family members, to step away from bad influences, to turn from traditional practices and beliefs that had rooted their identities for generations. The Japanese word for repent is kuiara tameru. I've always appreciated it. It's made up of two main parts: to remorse and to stop. And I do feel remorse. I regret that I participated in a form of cultural appropriation, that I contributed to a structure that sometimes severed people from themselves in the name of saving them. And I hope I've stopped. What I'm doing now, what this book is trying to do, is not about conversion. It's about reflection. It's about becoming a mirror, holding up an ink blot, not to tell you what to see, but to offer a space where you can recognize what's already within you. Your ideas, your values, your stories, your glitches, your gifts, and maybe your place in this universe as evolving life. A nervous system shaped by experience, not just by childhood or trauma or culture, but by billions of years of cosmic unfolding. You are a unique expression of existence itself, a thread that runs from the Big Bang to this very moment. Not a broken thing that needs to be fixed, but a signal, a wave, a becoming. The stories we hold determine our perceptions and experience. They can expand us or collapse us, empower or enslave. This book has been an invitation for you to examine the stories you hold by contrasting them against the stories I have been sharing. So now, in Chapter 18, let's turn this book's spiral one last time, at least until you decide to go back and read it all again with new eyes. Act 1. And in the end. In The Secret Doctrine, Helena Blavatsky called this final spiral return to the beginning the seventh root race. Not a race in the modern sense, but a phase of consciousness. The final turn of the spiral. She said it would arrive only after great purifications. A future humanity so spiritually attuned that gender dissolves, conflict evaporates, and matter itself grows luminous. In this vision, the soul doesn't just ascend, it returns. Not up and away, but back and in. It remembers what it never quite forgot, that even individuation was an illusion, a useful costume in the school play of form. The seventh root race, she wrote, would not emerge through technology or conquest, but through reunion, a soft, radiant coherence where being is enough, where love no longer needs a reason, where the many become one, not by erasing difference, but by holding it in harmony. The raw material echoes this pattern through a different lens. Instead of races, it speaks of densities, layers of consciousness evolving toward unity. At the seventh density, even the polarity between self and other dissolves. The being no longer serves or is served. It simply is. Ra calls this the final harvest, the moment all experiences are gathered, resolved, and reabsorbed into the one infinite creator. Memory fades. Stories fall away. What remains is undistorted unity. This is not a loss, but a return, the joyful unmasking of the mythical creator, who had wandered through illusion to know itself more deeply. But a return to what? There is one more scientific perspective I want to introduce before we wrap this all up. David Tong is a theoretical physicist at Cambridge University who specializes in quantum field theory, a model of reality so elegant and strange, it may very well be the scientific language of reunion. Quantum field theory begins with a radical idea. What we perceive as solid particles, electrons, protons, photons, are not tiny billiard balls bouncing around in space. They are excitations, disturbances, like ripples on the surface of an invisible ocean. And each type of particle corresponds to its own field. So there's not one electron here and another over there, but one electron field stretching across the entire universe. Every electron in your body and mine is not a separate object, but a localized vibration in this disturbed, single, excited, shared field. You and I, at the most fundamental level, are not made of stuff. We are made of disturbances, organized patterns of resonance in a fabric that unites us all. Tong puts it this way: the true ingredients of the universe are not particles, but fields, and fields are not confined to one place. They are everywhere, always humming, always connected. If that sounds familiar, like something you might find in ancient spiritual texts or mystical poetry, it's because it is. Blavatsky's radiant reunion, Ra's undistorted unity, the surrender of the self into something greater. Quantum field theory offers a scientific mirror to these mythic truths. It suggests that individuation, for all its beauty and importance, is a temporary phenomenon, that beneath the illusion of separation, we were always connected, always one. And maybe that understanding is what we're returning to. Not a place, but a perspective. Not the beginning of the story, but the silent infinity from which all stories arise. In this book, we began at an archaeological dig in Fish Lake, southern Utah. Swiftly, gently, we brushed away layers of sediment to reveal a buried bear claw pendant. A metaphor. What does that mean to you? If something precious in you had been hidden beneath layers of earth, what would that treasure be? And what would those layers represent? From there, we boarded a whitewater raft. We hit rapids. We spun in eddies. And we asked, why does this still feel off, even when we're doing all the things we're supposed to do? We looked at the difference between form and function, and how easy it is to confuse the two. We met Leonardo determinist Vinci and his tip of whimsy, a way to understand the nested layers of will, that subtle agency, that quiet moment of pause, the breath before choice, that tiny tilt, left or right, that changes everything. We explored the recurring pattern of threes, a sense of completeness echoed in the mind-body-spirit model. Not to define the mystery, but to hold it more gently. We considered how the mind tries to override the body's wisdom, how the body stores our past, our lineage, our stories, our instincts, and how we often try to outrun that in order to survive. We examined the deep code of spirit or soul. Are we wired for service to self or service to other? What does our soul remember? What has it inherited, and what does it choose? We turned to inspirational instigators like Ra, Seth, and the gene keys, and we grounded those cosmic ideas in the language of science and the body. And then we zoomed way out, or maybe way in, to the Big Bang, the cosmos, the 7-layer burrito of existence. We traced the arc of evolution, the long unfolding that brought us here. Neurons, networks, narratives. We explored how our nervous system didn't just emerge in this universe, but from it. How it's shaped by, and still in dialogue with, everything around us. To ground the ideas in this book with the language of science, we turn to the minds of researchers and thinkers who have illuminated the inner workings of perception, emotion, consciousness, and connection. David Eagleman helped us understand the concept of the Umwelt, the idea that every creature perceives only a narrow sliver of reality based on the sensory tools available to it. His example of a vibrating vest translating sounds into skin sensations showed us how perception is fluid, adaptable, how neurons can remap meaning based on new forms of input. The brain, in other words, is not fixed. It's a storyteller, endlessly interpreting and revising based on what it can detect. Anil Seth extended this insight. He called perception a controlled hallucination, reminding us that what we experience as reality is the brain's best guess, built from probabilities and shaped by emotion, memory, and need. What we feel is not illusion, it's creation. Our consciousness is an interface, crafted by evolution, sculpted by attention, and tuned to survival. And what tunes it? Stephen Porges and his polyvagal theory offered a powerful answer. He showed us that our nervous system is not just reactive, but exquisitely relational. It listens to danger, to safety, to voice tone, facial expression, even proximity. Through the vagus nerve, which connects brainstem to heart, lungs, and gut, we trace our internal state and shift accordingly. Fight, flight, freeze, or engage, connect, and co-regulate. Polyvagal theory reframes trauma not as dysfunction, but as an intelligent adaptation. When cues of threat persist, the nervous system may bypass sympathetic activation altogether and drop into what's called dorsal vagal shutdown, a survival state marked by dissociation, collapse, numbness, anxiety, depression, or emotional withdrawal. At the chemical level, this shutdown is often triggered by a prolonged excess of red chemistry, stress hormones like cortisol, adrenaline, and norepinephrine that dominate the system during extended states of fight or flight. When the body can no longer sustain this imbalance, it initiates a shift into blue chemistry, a rise in inhibitory compounds like endogenous opioids, serotonin, and acetylcholine. This shift isn't failure. It's a final act of self-preservation. The body's way of numbing the pain of helplessness and conserving energy when escape is no longer an option. This interplay between neurochemistry and emotion does not happen in isolation. Psychoneuroimmunology, the study of how our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs influence our immune function, adds another layer of insight. Chronic stress, shame, or fear can weaken immune response. States of gratitude, connection, and inner safety can bolster it. Our stories, quite literally, get under our skin. The nervous system, endocrine system, and immune system are not separate entities, but one integrated network, constantly in dialogue. Candace Pert deepened this understanding. Her discovery of neuropeptides, what she called molecules of emotion, showed us that emotions aren't confined to the brain. They echo through every organ, every tissue, every cell. Emotional suppression doesn't delete the data. It just delays the processing. What we don't feel consciously, we may still carry somatically in the body. That's where David Hawkins entered with his map of consciousness. He invited us to view emotional states not as static traits, but as moving energy fields, each with a distinct vibrational frequency and psychological effect. Letting go of resistance to these states, he taught, is how we transmute suffering into presence. Jonathan Haidt helped us contextualize this with the image of the rider and the elephant. The rider is the logical brain. The elephant is the emotional nervous system. If you ever tried to think your way out of a panic attack or ignore the ache of grief, you know how futile the rider's control can be. The real power lies in relationship, in trust, in dialogue between the two. Yuval Harari zoomed us out further. He reminded us that our world is built not just on biology or facts, but on fictions, the shared beliefs and stories that shape our collective behavior. Whether in religions, nations, or human rights, these fictions function like cultural nervous systems. They carry the charge of identity, belonging, and purpose across groups. When they are coherent, they regulate us. When they fracture, we dysregulate together. David Tong shows us our constant connection to the quantum level. Through quantum field theory, we encountered a vision of unity, that all electrons, across all people, cells, and stars, are ripples in a single continuous field. What looks like separation is just localized activity. At the deepest level, we are all expressions of the same wave. And Stuart Hameroff and Roger Penrose wondered whether our neurons might actually communicate with that wave. Their ORC-OR theory suggests that microtubules within neurons may act like quantum receivers, tuned not just to electricity and biochemistry, but to patterns of coherence deeper than we currently understand. In this view, consciousness does not just arise from the brain, it resonates through it. Together, these scientific voices bring shape and weight to the metaphors we explored earlier in the book. Polyvagal theory and interoception illuminate the triad of mind, body, spirit. Haidt's elephant helps explain why logic alone can't override embodied wisdom. Eagleman, Seth, and Pert show how perception and emotion are not fixed realities, but living processes. Hawkins and Harari remind us that our stories, internal and collective, create the frameworks through which we live. And Tong, Hameroff, and Penrose suggest that what we call self might be a localized ripple in a cosmic field. All of it, the science, the metaphor, the personal, is pointing to the same thing. And now, maybe you're seeing it too. Look at your hand for a moment. It's your hand, right? You can move your fingers, wiggle them. All you have to do is think, and it happens. Somehow, cells in your body, coordinated by neurons, interact with the muscles to allow that motion to occur. The thought to move, the movement itself, the fingers, all of it, you. Now zoom in. That hand, those muscles, it's all made up of a diverse body of trillions of cells working seamlessly together in relationship with each other and with the world around them. Are each of those cells also you? Each one is remarkably complex. On the outside, a semi-permeable membrane wraps around it, not just a barrier, but, as Bruce Lipton once suggested, a kind of cellular brain. It regulates what enters and what exits. It responds to the environment through epigenetics. It makes choices. Inside that cell live tiny organelles, little stomachs, little lungs, little hearts of their own. They float in cytoplasm, the cell's version of blood. And in the center, the nucleus. And deep inside that nucleus is a strand of DNA. The same strand, replicated in all the trillions of cells in your body. A molecular autobiography, a code millions of years in the making, shaped by evolution, by relationship, by trial and error and emergence. This DNA doesn't belong to just you. It's a shared language, an inherited syntax of life. Humans share most of it with each other, but we also share it, strikingly, with every other living being on this planet. To varying degrees, we are echoes of the same song. Can you hear your own voice in it? It's as if the earth herself once said, "Let's try something new. Let's try many things new. Let's become experience. Let's unfold. Let's diversify. Let's become everything we can possibly become and experience it directly from every perspective we can possibly create." And she did, beginning with molecules. Your ancient ancestors, even before the emergence of your cells. And these molecules, these cellular storybooks, exist only because they're made of atoms. Atoms forged in the hearts of stars, supernova dust, stardust. And these atoms themselves are not solid things. They are mostly space, mostly possibility, held together by the buzzing tension of subatomic particles, protons, neutrons, electrons. And those electrons, they're not discrete objects. They're waves, ripples in a single universal field. All of that as you're looking at your hand. Remember Tong's field. There's not one electron here and another there. There's one electron field, one ocean, and we are its waves. All of it, you. All of it, us. So perhaps the return isn't a collapse into sameness, not a demand to become singular or uniform. Perhaps it's a celebration of difference, of form, of the sacred fractal of selfhood in all its shimmering diversity. Because existence seems to want that. It strives and thrives toward variation. It plays. It creates. It learns. Every brushstroke of Leonardo Determinist Vinci, every law-bound flick of cosmic intention, makes room for the tip of whimsy, for variation, for art. So when we say we are returning to the beginning with new eyes, maybe that's what we mean. Maybe that's what healing means. This book has been offered as a kind of Rorschach ink blot, a mirror of metaphors, a kaleidoscopic imprint of life upon the fabric of your own mind. It might feel abstract or strange or even unrelatable. You might wonder, what does any of this have to do with my daily life? Let me show you. What follows is one small example from my own life. Act 2. The Love You Take. It was nighttime in Arizona. Clear, warm, deceptively quiet. Cammie and I were walking the dog through our neighborhood, street lights humming, the kind of stillness that doesn't ask for anything, just lets you notice. Then we saw them. Bright, hovering lights in the sky. Not moving like planes, suspended, subtle. And something in both of us lit up. It looks like the Phoenix lights are back, I joked. Cammie laughed, tilting her head. They've returned for us. It was the kind of moment where wonder, curiosity, and shared imagination braid together. Not about truth or fiction, just about the joy of not knowing and not being alone in it. When two people speculate out loud, not to land anywhere, but to drift together. And then we heard the helicopters. Low, heavy, circling. The lights weren't alone. That's over by the mall, I said. Something's going on. Cammie went quiet. I felt the shift in her body before she spoke. My son went to grab food out that way. I hope he's okay. And without thinking, I responded, "Oh, I'm sure he's fine. The mall's further out than he went." It sounded like comfort, but something in me dropped. A tightness, a pull, like a tuning fork being struck in the wrong key. It wasn't what I said. It was what I didn't feel. And I knew it. Not in my head, in my chest. The care and concern that a mother has for her son. A nervous system in someone I love beginning to hum with fear. I had been practicing noticing that. Months of binaural audio meditations, inviting my mind into theta states, softening the static enough for signals to get through. I'd also been listening to a podcast by Dr. Schuyler Hamilton, Heal Your Mind, Heal Your Body. Schuyler and I go way back. We were mascots together in high school. Aztecs, at a school named after the sun. Back then, we goofed around and cheered in unison. Now, decades later, she's illuminating the biochemistry of trauma, the quiet impact of invalidation, the way red chemistry builds in the body when subtle dismissals stack up. And in that moment with Cammie, I felt it. I had bypassed her fear. Not because I didn't care, because I didn't pause. My old survival reflexes stepped in. Old strategies I had unconsciously created to avoid what felt like yucky feelings. And I followed them. But something else stirred underneath. A deeper pattern, like neurons trying to take a different route. I had this image. I was a shepherd, and these old neural pathways were sheep, already headed down the familiar trail. But this time, I stepped in, gently turned them. No force, just redirection. I stopped walking. "Wait," I said. "I want to share something with you." Cammie looked up. "I think I just did the thing I always do. I tried to make your fear go away. I said your son would be fine, but I didn't feel with you first. And I'm sorry." We had been talking about Ho'oponopono recently, the Hawaiian practice of reconciliation. So I let it come. Ho'oponopono, in its original, pre-culturally appropriated form, was never just an individual practice. It was a collective one. a sacred ceremony of restoration rooted in the wisdom of the Hawaiian people, long before colonization or Western psychology had words for trauma or co-regulation. Traditionally led by an elder, Ho'oponopono was a communal healing ritual that brought families together to clear blocked energy, resolve conflict, and restore harmony, not just interpersonally, but cosmically. It wasn't about blame, it was about balance. The word itself means to make right, or to restore to harmony. Ho'o implies an active process, and pono means righteousness, balance, and alignment. Repeated twice, it implies depth and layering, a making right of what is already striving to be right, a kind of sacred tuning. In modern adaptations, the practice becomes internalized, a self-cleansing mantra of 4 simple phrases. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. To some, these words sound passive or performative. But to the nervous system, they are something else entirely. Regulating signals, cues of safety, invitations into parasympathetic blue chemical states where the body no longer needs to brace or guard, where breath slows, where muscles relax, where the chemistry of presence replaces the chemistry of defense. Because Ho'oponopono isn't just emotional, it's biological. It repatterns the neural circuits that govern survival, perception, and connection. It bridges the gap between sympathetic urgency and ventral vagal stillness. And when spoken in authenticity, when felt, not just said, it changes the field between people. In that way, it's not unlike polyvagal theory or the spiraling wisdom of psychoneuroimmunology, but it predates them, and it emerges from a worldview that understands relationship as foundational, not incidental. A worldview in which land, ancestors, breath, body, and community are all part of one living system. Healing one node affects the whole. This is why Ho'oponopono matters now more than ever. Because we're not just navigating interpersonal conflict. We're navigating planetary trauma. We're remembering that every nervous system is nested within larger systems, that healing isn't linear, it's fractal, that the way I soothe or suppress my own discomfort sends ripples into the collective. If Earth is becoming a kind of nervous system, if what Teilhard de Chardin called the noosphere is now coalescing into a planetary mind, then practices like Ho'oponopono may be the early breath pattern of that mind, neural rehearsal for coherence. What we do in the micro matters in the macro. And when we speak those 4 phrases from a place of presence, we're sending alignment signals into the morphogenetic field. It begins with one pause, one moment of feeling instead of fixing, one softening breath that makes it safe to be seen. This is the nervous system of Lemuria still alive in us, the body wisdom that knows how to stay in resonance, the cellular memory of coherence still humming beneath the static. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. I repeated this to Cami. Her shoulders softened. Her breath deepened. So did mine. There was no dramatic transformation, but the field shifted. The air felt different. And here's the part that stays with me. I could have missed it. In the past, I definitely would have. I've spent my entire life unconsciously learning how to create just enough static in my system to drown out these kinds of signals. Noise is protective when presence feels risky. But that night, something in me didn't want the noise. It wanted resonance. Once I saw it, I didn't want to unsee it. That's the truth. That desire is what guides me now. It's not discipline. It's not perfection. It's just that gentle gravitational pull toward balance, toward shepherding my inner sheep down a more loving path. And when that mechanism is missing, when the signals of presence aren't received, the body holds on. It prepares. It protects. Not because it's broken, but because it's brilliant. That's psychoneuroimmunology, the science of how your nervous system, endocrine system, and immune system talk to each other. If your system learns that vulnerability equals danger, it recruits hormones and immune responses to keep you armored. Even when the danger has passed, the chemistry doesn't forget. Act 3 is equal to the love you make. But here is the miracle. That chemistry can change. This is where neuroplasticity comes in, not as a buzzword, but as a lived truth. Your brain is constantly rewiring in response to attention, intention, and emotion. The more consistently you feel safe, the more your system adapts to trust that safety. Not all at once, not forever, but in spirals. You feel a new feeling. You notice a new response. You soften where you used to brace. And sometimes that softening begins with just one choice: to listen. Not just to the thoughts, to the entire body, as much as you can feel through the static. Because interoception, the ability to sense your internal state, is the compass through which that choice becomes embodied. It's your Jiminy Cricket. It's your Holy Ghost. It's the warmth in your belly when you are received, the clench in your throat before a truth you're afraid to speak, the pulse behind your eyes when grief wants to move. Interoception is your soul speaking through your cells. It's how you know what's real. It's how you know what's you. And it's what performance culture taught you to ignore. We live in systems that reward suppression, that call disconnection professionalism, that mistake numbness for maturity, that measure worth by productivity instead of presence. And so it's no wonder that returning to the body feels like a rebellion. It is, a holy one. And it doesn't require perfection, just permission to pause, to feel, to name what's true, even when you can't fix it, especially then. That's why I try to fill my brain with alts, automatic, loving thoughts. Not affirmations to override pain, but small phrases that restore relationship with myself, invitations back into safety, gentle redirections toward coherence. I'm allowed to move at my own pace. My fear makes sense. I can't control everything, but I can stay with myself. These thoughts don't change the world. They change my tone. And tone, more than content, is what the nervous system remembers. So I return to these thoughts, the way you return to breath in meditation. I say them with a hand on my chest. I say them into silence. And with every cue I send myself, with every signal I honor, I'm building something. Because every nervous system is porous. Every signal ripples. And the coherence you claim for yourself echoes outward into your home, your relationships, your community, the planet. So ask yourself, where are you still interpreting signals as problems to be solved when they might be invitations to feel? Where are you chasing control instead of choosing presence? Where does your nervous system still brace for disappointment, for dismissal, for impact? And what might it take to soften? Can you feel the difference between bypassing and being with? between silencing a symptom and tuning into its rhythm? Where do old stories still shape your chemistry? Stories that say you're too much or not enough. And what would it mean to stay? Not because there's something broken that needs to be fixed, but simply to experience, to witness, gently, curiously, consistently, to feel the heat and trust the steam, to recognize that even the ache is intelligence, that even the glitch is a gift. Because you're not broken, you're rewiring. Always.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.